these are long form stories,
Yeah,
like
I
3,000
see.
words. No,
The trolls won't read that.
yeah.
No, that's fair. That's a good way to avoid cyberbullying. Just write longer stuff, so because they can't read. Welcome to Postgrads. Two Columbia J School alumni walk into a bar. Surbhi, what do you think the punchline should be?
How are we surviving in this economy?
Well, yeah, no, nobody can afford buying $18 cocktails. That's without tips, you
Yeah,
know.
definitely.
So today we have Surbhi Gupta, who graduated from Columbia Journalism School Master of Arts in 2022 and is now the South Asian editor and reporter for New Lines magazine. Did I get that correct?
Yes, you did.
Awesome. So, Surbhi, what made you want to choose Columbia Journalism School at first?
So, um, I'll have to start in 2017 when I had just started my first job. I was working in Delhi at the Indian Express, which is one of the national dailies in the country. And my first beat, which is like the beat which every journalist dreams of, is to cover crime. And I got that. But then I think soon after I started covering crime, and then in such a big city like Delhi, I was like, maybe I can't do this. Or maybe it was just the first time trainee journalist jitters. And then my editors, they shifted me to the features team, and I was like, wow, I don't even know this. I had never looked at journalism from the lens of arts and culture. And then after 4 years, like, I realized that, okay, arts and culture is my thing. Like, I
Yeah.
want to build further on it. And then I found out this program at Columbia, which is like MA, which with a concentration on arts and culture. And I was like, wow, this is perfect. Like,
Yeah.
like the next milestone in this journey.
Absolutely. And you mentioned before that you have a very extensive background, like either in education or in working like in journalism. You worked at Times for Delhi, and you were in Indrapartha College of Women. Did I get that correct?
Yeah,
Pronounce that
it's
correctly?
like there's a short form. It's IP College for Women. It's Delhi University. It's one
I
of the-
see.
Yeah.
I see. And you postgrad was in Asian College of Journalism. So what do you think the differences are, like comparing to the doing journalism in Delhi in India versus doing journalism in the United States?
I think it's perhaps the scope. I think the way we look at journalism in India, we learn about the world, but I think our end goal is perhaps like mine and my peers was to, get a job in India, get into like that, start off as a trainee journalist and go on from there. Here, I realize that I don't know, it feels wrong to say serious, but like something more in depth. You
Yeah.
go into like when we're learning about investigative journalism,
Uh-huh.
it's like getting deep into public records and writing that 2,000 word pitch, or even our thesis project, like we had to go into the field. We could travel anywhere in the world and do our thesis.
Yeah.
And that's like a great experience, if like say for somebody who has no experience to kind of just do that. Like here it operates on a global scale perhaps, and there we are still kind of in our national, like on a very Indian level that we are thinking.
And are the knowledges and skills that you learn from other institutions mostly similar from with what Columbia has to offer, or do you think there are more nuances?
I think it's been almost a decade since I studied journalism in
Yeah,
India.
fair.
So it's I don't know what how things have changed. But I think there it was the basics. Like it was like learning the basics. In here, I think it was like taking a step forward. Like I think in the MA program they recognize that we come with the basics. So it's about going in depth into our concentration.
Yeah,
So
yeah. I mean that's fair. But like when I was in MS program, I did not come knowing the basic because I used to be an English major. I was writing fictions before this. So when I came here, and I remember our professor threw us onto the street and be like, talk to people and write an article. And I was terrified. I didn't know what to do. So, like like in some part I wish that I came here, with a little bit of background and knowing some of the basics. So like maybe perhaps the first few weeks of class can get a little easier. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think that's for anybody who's like taking their first steps into journalism.
Yeah,
Because I
absolutely.
feel like I did that when I was doing my postgrad in India. Like, when I was in Asian College of Journalism, and it's in this, it's in Chennai, which is like a major metropolitan city in
Hmm.
southern India. But it's a very different culture from northern India, different language. So we were reporting in a place where we didn't even speak the language.
Yeah.
So
Hmm.
yeah, so I think everybody goes through that at least once.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you mentioned before in our previous conversation that your parents initially weren't so hot about your learning journalism. So, what do you think eventually changed their mind?
That's an interesting story. I say that's often something I tell people about, to illustrate the impact of cinema in India and how big that
Uh huh.
is.
Hmm.
Because in India, typically parents like their children to follow very safe career paths, and I somehow pretty early on when I was in eighth grade, I had decided to be a journalist. And whenever my parents and I know, like, we as family would travel to like different parts of the country and cross like remote villages and towns, and I had this urge that I want to come back and I want to speak to these people and write about like life in India.
Hmm.
So but then what changed their minds was this film in 2010, I think it released when I was in grade 10, but
Hmm.
called Three Idiots.
Oh yes, I love that movie. Uh huh. Yeah, keep going.
I
Yeah.
think it became very popular in China itself. I think maybe similar cultures.
Yeah.
So yeah, so basically it critiques this entire like this rat race that
Hmm.
everybody's in, and going to engineering schools,
Hmm.
and somehow my mom, I think she said that no, children should do whatever they want to
Hmm.
do. And then somehow they became the opposite, like, in this whole, again, race to get the best college, get into the
Hmm.
best college. I was like, oh, maybe I should change my subject. And then they
Yeah.
said, no, you will study journalism.
Yeah. Wow.
Because that's your subject. No
That's
matter
awesome.
where you
Yeah.
go, you will
Hmm.
study journalism. So
That's great.
yeah.
Yeah, that's actually so nice to hear. Do you think job searching has become easier after studying at Columbia? Like after you get that one line on your resume, like I graduated MA Columbia.
Um, I think yes and no both,
Hmm.
because I
Yeah.
feel like when, especially if as international students, as immigrant journalists, when we move to a new country, you kind of have to start from scratch. So it was difficult. I think one of the most difficult things that I've done
Wow.
is
Yeah.
look for a
Absolutely.
job in
Mhm.
the US.
Yeah.
But at the same time, what makes it easier is that Columbia has such a strong alumni network. We are
Hmm.
sitting here,
Hmm.
so even like when I somehow got connected to my editor, and now at New Lines,
Hmm.
I think it made a difference that she also was an alum.
Hmm.
I think the network creates a lot of opportunities, but that initial, search is the tough part.
Absolutely. So you have been working at New Lines right after you graduated, ever since you graduated. Why did you choose to work there, and what do you like about that job?
I didn't choose to work there. I was grateful I got the opportunity to work there.
Yeah. Hmm.
But the story is that after graduation, I was looking for places to like pitch my stories or assignments I had
Hmm.
worked on to. And then at that time, we had just started learning about New Lines, that, oh,
Hmm.
and then somehow, call it fate, they were looking for a fellow. And I was like, and they asked me if I was interested to interview. And I said, yes, please, of course. And then I think after a month and a half maybe, they were expanding at the time. They wanted somebody to like build their South Asia coverage, and Columbia prepared me for it. I
Hmm.
could take up this job as an editor. So that's how New Lines happened. And then
Hmm.
I suddenly had to like think about, it was not just about my stories that I'm reporting, but
Hmm.
you're building like a coverage for a magazine from scratch for from a region. So you look at different writers who you can approach to different topics, stories beyond your beat. I had the opportunity to actually reach out to a writer, be like, oh, why don't do you Do you want to write on this? Like,
Mhm.
let's
Mhm.
collaborate.
Yeah. Yeah. So, are there any impressive stories that you have covered that you're very proud of?
At New Lines, last year, I did like a long piece on rape culture in India.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, you know, so again, the story about that is that there was this gang rape that happened in March in this rural part of India, where there was this foreign tourist who was perhaps on a bike tour, like a cross country bike tour, and they're not hotels and villages in India, so they pitched a tent and they thought they could spend the night, and these group of guys came and like looted them and gang raped the woman. And one of my first reactions was, oh, they should have been better advised. You don't do that in India. And I
Like
was like,
the
wait,
women should have been like look out for themselves more.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, the couple, and
Mhm.
and then I was like, wait a minute, that's victim blaming,
Mhm.
because they were minding their own business.
Yeah.
These group of guys came and committed this
Mhm.
heinous crime.
Mhm.
So that's when I started thinking about, like, what prompted these men? Like, what is it about our culture that would make them think that this is okay to
Mhm.
do? Um and that's when I went back to like a lot of older documentaries or books or research that has been done on rape convicts in India. And basically the conclusion was that these are very ordinary men, like this is how men are raised in
Yeah.
India.
Mhm.
And then there is this culture, there's a culture around rape, how it's normalized to send rape threats
Mhm. Mhm.
online and in movies, and there's this anti-feminist backlash also now.
Yeah.
So like, men would get, like, say if they get a phone number of of a woman, they think it's okay to, like, keep on calling her, like it's they don't think of it
Mhm.
as as harassment. I think that's when I realized that how hard it is to report on these issues. Like, I didn't have to go into the field, it was mostly research and like piecing together different things. But especially like reading those books or research papers or watching documentaries and like coming to terms with how people think. There's a feminist space, women,
Mhm.
like a whole corner for women, and then men have created their own space and they have their own narratives, and those are things you want to report on so that more people,
Yeah.
like, to critique or even just to, like, say that this exists and this is
Yeah.
this is what,
Acknowledge. Mhm.
yeah, like what is happening. But it's not easy, as in you have to, like, just as a journalist, like, prepare yourself that, okay, if I'm entering this space, like, prepared to be triggered, but
Yeah.
like keep patience and keep
Mhm.
on going.
Mhm.
But that's the thing, I felt like instead of outrage, you just had to spell it out the way it is. That's how you kind of just present.
And when you are reporting on these like heavier topics, have you ever gotten like hate mails or hate comments or like cyberbullies on these?
um Not really, because I feel like these are long form stories,
Yeah,
like
I
3000
see.
foot. No.
The trolls won't read that.
Yeah.
No, that's fair. That's a good way to avoid cyberbullying. Just write longer stuff, so because they can't read.
So there are some topics that maybe trolls come after you for, like, if you
Hmm.
especially write on, you critique Hindu nationalist politics that we
Yeah.
have in
Hmm.
the country,
Yeah.
or yeah, if maybe I had written more of a rage bait piece on rape culture, maybe men had come after me.
Yeah.
But
Hmm.
I think the kind of journalism I do now
Hmm.
and we do at New Lines, people would have to really read, engage, understand the
Right,
argument.
exactly. Like it doesn't really attract trolls that
Yeah.
much. That's good. That's a really good thing. So you're an editor at New Lines magazine, and that's a little bit different from being a reporter. So what do you usually do for work, and what is like different from being a reporter?
So, as an editor, I have to follow the news. Like, say, my beat as as a reporter is, I mostly focus, or I like to focus on arts and culture.
Hmm.
But as an editor, I can't limit myself to that. So anything that happens in politics. Say, we had recently had this youth uprising in Nepal. So I have to know, and even if I don't know, I have to read up on and educate myself on different topics that become the part of the news cycle. So I have to follow the news cycle. I have to think of ways we can cover it differently, because in New Lines we don't do like daily news reporting or news features, so we would like to go beyond the news and see what we can say and
Right.
add a fresh perspective.
And besides some heavier topics, you also report on some more lighthearted story. Like you said, you are art and culture journalist. So, like your review RRR, like that was one of the most insane movies I have ever watched. So, what do you prefer to write on these heavier topics or those more lighthearted ones?
Oh, that's a good question. I think I like the lighthearted topics
Mm-hmm.
because oftentimes people don't take them seriously.
Mm-hmm.
Like for you mentioned the story about RRR,
Mm-hmm.
like it was so popular in the United States,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of people were writing about it, that it's become so popular in the US, and perhaps like giving some political context behind it or some cultural
Mm-hmm.
context. But I was like, but what is it about it that's making it so popular?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because it's a very like it's a film that emerged from the sensibilities of a very like a regional cinema, like a
Yeah.
Telugu
Mm-hmm.
cinema,
Mm-hmm.
and then became such a smash hit and won an Oscar.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went to watch the film at MoMA, actually, Museum
Mm-hmm.
of Modern
Mm-hmm.
Art,
Yeah.
and I spoke to many people. And then a lot of people said that post pandemic we're so tired of the same, like we need hope, we need color in our
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
cinema,
Yeah. Uh-huh.
and I think that's what RRR like brought to them.
I think what in the depth is RRR knows exactly what it is. It's like it's the most popcorn cinema of popcorn cinema. It's like you do the most over the top thing that to attract the audience, that you use the most the brightest color possible. You do the craziest stunt, and then just make sure that the audience every time they look up at the screen, something crazy is happening.
Something crazy is
Yeah.
happening, and I feel like watching that's when I realized that watching something in the theater and at home is such a different experience.
Yeah.
Because I'd watched the film at home and I was like, yeah, okay. But then when I watched it in the theater, I was like, oh my god, I
Yeah.
see
Uh-huh. Oh
why.
wow. Uh-huh.
I see the appeal. I see why people are going crazy
Uh-huh.
because I'm going crazy.
Yeah, we noticed that your master project at Columbia was about body positivity in South Asia. Can you like elaborate a bit on that? What was that like about?
Yeah, so I think I'll go back to how I came up with that topic. I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to do something that connected women and social media, and then somehow and how it had made an impact on their lives. And one of the things then I ended up with was that we have this culture of body shaming in India and larger South Asia, but I'll
Mm-hmm.
focus on India. And it comes from two places. One is, we have this whole culture of arranged marriages in our country. So women are judged on their looks. So like I grew up with a lot of it, like I had acne or I had curly hair, and
Mm-hmm.
I would be body shamed on it or on my weight. And then at the same time, what happened was in the 2000s, early 2000s, India was like getting was liberalized and was
Mm-hmm.
opening up to the world. Globalization, it was the age of globalization. So, and we had like Indians were winning like your Miss World, Miss Universe. So
Mm-hmm.
suddenly we had these global beauty brands come into the country,
Mm-hmm.
and with them they brought these very Eurocentric beauty
Yeah.
standards.
Yeah.
So then what we saw on cinema, on the screen, is how we wanted. So that also added to our insecurities.
Yeah.
But there was like until social media came, I don't think there was any space that spoke about, that showed diverse bodies, or spoke about this cool culture. So and then when I I reached out to several influencers for that story. And then when I interviewed them, I realized, like, uh, again, this culture that they had grown up with, like these were serious stories. This
Mm-hmm.
was like serious trauma that
Mm-hmm.
they had they've been carrying with themselves.
Did you write a lot of South Asian stories when you were at J school?
I did. So when I came here, I was so confused
Mm-hmm.
about what should I do, because it's just when you start J school, it gives you a little bit time and then it just hits you.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely.
You have to start working on assignments and
Tell me about it.
stories,
Yeah.
and I think the most familiar thing when you come here, especially, it was very interesting. Like, it was not like I didn't follow American culture
Mm-hmm.
back in India.
Mm-hmm.
But somehow when I came here, I was so lost.
Oh yeah, me too.
I was like, then I would, you go to your familiar spots, places, and like spaces, as in you'll write about, you'll find stories about South Asia, and but then I also realized that South Asia was my beat, like,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
and South Asia is what I wanted to write
Yeah.
about.
Mm-hmm.
So it was both the things. I was very confused, but then I also realized that this is what I want to
Yeah, absolutely.
do. But I think I would also say there was a moment where I was like, do I want to go back home? Do I want to be here? And when I decided to be here, I was like, if I have to be in the United States, I need to learn how to report here. So I was open to going anywhere, like even a smaller town or a city, and learn, like, start from scratch about how does
Absolutely.
one report
Mm-hmm.
in the US.
Yeah. With all these stories that we have mentioned so far, do you think these stories are going to be different, going to feel different, still going to make sense if it were reported by a different person with a different background?
Yeah, I feel they would be different, because I think uh, that's the difference between an insider and an outsider. Like, say if I'm writing about uh, the US, or say if I'm writing about black culture or Arab culture, like, I don't have that context
Absolutely.
that they have. And similarly, like, they don't have the context that I have. So um so yeah, they would have been different. It depends on, again, I think, the approach you take. There are some journalists who are not Indian, but they have, they're experts, they've done their homework, they
Mm-hmm.
know the country
Mm-hmm.
and its politics or culture well. So, for example, like, there is Isaac Chotiner at New Yorker. He interviews a lot of Indian, artists or politicians or writers, and I think he really knows India well. So I really enjoy reading his interviews.
And so we're coming to this part of the interview where we like to leave you a few minutes to just monologue away. And I want to give you this prompt. Like, what advice would you like to give to the newer people who are just stepped into this industry, who are just starting out, and are now just encountering their first waves of difficulties?
I think what we're right now going through is a very unprecedented time in the US, right? It's not easy, and especially those who have come recently, in this very hyper polarized, and globally we're seeing like a very anti immigrant sentiment. So um so that so that has also changed how schools operate or like run their programs. So I think in the MA program there's been a big shift, because they're no longer concentrations, or they've had to, because it's a smaller group, so they've had to uh, change some things in the program. And what I've been telling my friends is that just take the best out of it. Like, or, I mean, one has to just, in this, again, going back to the economy, we have to persevere. Like, I think in general, as a journalist, to continue working as a journalist, you need so much of resilience, because it's not an easy industry to be in. So I feel like there are more challenges now, but we are a resilient bunch of people. So, and I think if there is hardship, there are stories.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
And especially at this time in the
Mm-hmm.
US, and we saw this with the previous batch too. I mean, I'm sure during your
Mm-hmm.
batch or before, like, Columbia was the hub for campus protest, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
all the students, though it changed the experience of what being in school was. But then as journalists, like, you had the first access to one of the biggest stories in the country.
Yeah.
So right now, like, these are tough times, but this is also like a minefield for
Yeah.
stories.
Mhm.
I mean, that's like even another thing you think about, like, as an Indian. Oh, so many of us want to go back, but then the media environment is so unconducive. It's so bad right now. It's so hard to, like, find a job, and if you find a job, they don't pay well. So but one of the things is that, and politically whatever is happening, but it's like it's a great time to be in, to cover stories, if you look at it from that sense.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think we can change. uh yeah, so hard times could be like good story.
There we go. That's it from Surbhi Gupta. And thank you so much for coming again.
Thank you
That
so much for
concludes our
having
interview.
me.
And stay tuned. Thank you.